The miracle of motherhood. We crave it. Some people pay thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands to get it. But what happens when that miracle turns into a nightmare? My name is Vermaak. I'm the author of Taming the Monster, a book about postnatal depression. And today I've got two special guests from Boardroom Couch, Taryn and Lynn. Taryn is an industrial psychologist and Lynn is a social worker, and we're going to be speaking about the topic of postnatal depression, in fact parental depression, postparental depression, and how that affects our lives, our families, and how it affects our productivity in the workplace. Welcome and thank you for joining us on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for letting us be here.
It's a great pleasure. Now we're going to jump straight into this topic. For me, it's a fascinating topic, but also one that has a lot of shame associated with it. And we're all mothers.
Yeah.
We all work specifically in the mental health space. You guys work in the HR space. So Taryn, let's have a little chat about your experience of motherhood. When you first started out, what are the things that typically overwhelm us that we don't expect?
Motherhood. Sometimes I'd say I'd rather get another degree than have another kid. So, but I love my children. Let me just put it out there. It's hard. It's challenging. And things that tend to overwhelm you is definitely lack of sleep. No one prepares you for that. People do tell you about that. But the lack of sleep, the also having to constantly get up and care for this little infant. It's quite exhausting, to be honest, especially when you struggle to latch, when you struggle to not know, do you burp the baby? Is the baby okay? I remember the one time we had all this technology of the angel cares and the monitors, and in the middle of the night, the alarm went off. I think it's the quickest me and my husband ever shot up at the bed and to check if the baby's breathing, because everyone speaks about cradle death as well. And that anxiety comes to you, like, is the baby breathing? So when you do eventually sleep, you're not actually sleeping because you're wondering then, is the baby sleeping? So there's so many struggles in that sense of lack of sleep, new routine, getting your routine with the baby's routine. And also people are excited with you about this baby and this new adventure. You've also got to navigate their emotions, your emotions, and that of the family as well. And as a wife, we sometimes forget about our husbands and navigating their emotions and this new journey for them. So there's quite a lot of struggles that aren't really spoken about that arises in motherhood.
Yeah. And the lack of sleep thing is really important. So when I was busy researching for the book, because I had really bad postnatal depression, and you don't really understand, it's not just I'm tired. I mean, today I'm tired because I had an event last night. But it is that utter debilitating exhaustion that you feel like you're drowning. And just for people who don't really think that this is a real thing, lack of sleep is a torture method.
Yes.
It is when we are interrogating people, lack of sleep is used as a torture method. And so that's what you're going through. People who've already had kids for quite some time, sometimes they forget how difficult that is. And when I look at the way society used to be structured, in fact, back in creation, you would be a close community. You would have your sister there, your mother there. Biblically, they used to say to you, you're not doing anything for this amount of time. So all of those people's needs would they would take care of you, and your husband's needs would be taken care of because the community would make sure the meals were sorted out and that kind of thing. Now we're far more isolated. Progress has allowed me to live in Johannesburg, whereas my mom lives in Port Elizabeth. But at that time of motherhood, you need someone to just take the baby away from you, you can nap. Those things are incredibly important.
I remember when I had my first child, Taryn, it was quite challenging because there was no support network. My parents weren't really involved. I couldn't really say, just give me a night's sleep so that we can sleep through. So it was quite challenging, and it's overwhelming, especially if you're young, it's your first child. You don't know what to do. And society thinks that you've got it under control. You should be able to do this. It's easy, but it's difficult because there's no book that says this is how it should be to be a mother. This is what you should do. So it is really overwhelming, especially if you don't have that support network.
Now, Lynn, you are a social worker, so you have dealt with a lot of family crises and that kind of thing. And what I've seen is that it doesn't happen in every case, but there are men that tend to leave their partners relatively soon after the baby is born. And what we tend to do is we tend to demonize those men, and we say, terrible person, you've done this thing. But they're also suffering from overwhelm. So what happens in a family dynamic if there's a separation so quickly after the birth?
I think it's disaster. The mother is going through all of this stuff. The husband doesn't know what's going on. It's a whole new dynamic that came into their relationship, especially if it's the first child, because now you have this little human that you have to look after. Let's say your wife is going through the postnatal and the husband doesn't understand. He's also trying to come to terms or trying to figure out what is his role in this new relationship, in this new family that has been built. And I think sometimes there is a total disconnect, and that adds to the stress, and with that disconnect, the communication goes down. The husband might feel neglected because the mother is spending all the time with the infant, and he might be thinking, "What is my role in this?" And I also found that with my husband when we spoke about it. It's like I have to play a role, but I don't know what role to play. So no one communicates to the husband as well the vital role that they play. So I think this is something that should be spoken about more, and I love what you're doing with your book, that you're highlighting these things, because not everybody knows what a new mother or someone that's going through postnatal depression is going through, and they need to be aware of it, and we need to be able to normalize these conversations and not just stick them under the mat and say, you know what, you should be a perfect mother. This is what society says. It's easy. And the thing is, society is also now on social media. And we look at these images on Facebook and Instagram, and we see these happy mothers with the infants, and they're laughing and they're smiling with the husbands and the other kids, and we think, I should be like that.
What's wrong with me?
What is wrong with me? And the constant comparison. And it makes things even worse. It makes that washing machine go faster and faster because I've got all the stuff going on and I'm not like that perfect family.
Yes. So also, like when you speak about the perfect pictures, when I used to look at the breastfeeding pictures, and I'm like, it's going to be wonderful. You know, they don't teach you that, number one, a woman's nipples are incredibly sensitive for a reason. But when that baby first latches, it doesn't know what to do. There's no manual that says, okay, baby, this is how you latch. I had a terrible breast infection because my baby bit me on the nipple, and I got an abscess which I had to have surgically drained. And I remember speaking to the gynecologist before I had the baby, and she said to me, if there's a little bit of blood that comes out in the baby stools, don't worry, it's just probably from your nipples. I'm like, so we're taught that breastfeeding is natural, it's best for the baby. I couldn't do much breastfeeding with the first baby because it didn't have support. It was only when I joined a breastfeeding support group that we started experiencing stories that they told us how long you need to hold on to until it figures out. Then I had someone to phone and say, I'm like in so much pain. And you can't say to the baby, okay, hang on, mommy's healing. No drinking for the next 3 weeks.
Not gonna happen. No, and it's so true what you say about that support, Kim, because I remember when I had my first baby, I called on my neighbors, and she had 2 kids already, and I said, this baby is not latching. This baby is hungry, it's not latching, I am freaking. And this is where she came in, she said through experience, she said there was different breastfeeding options and positions, and that just opened my world. You see, it's again that community, but it's asking for help.
Yes.
And that's not always easy to open up and ask for help, is it?
Exactly. Now let's just chat about getting back to the workspace, because at Boardroom Couch you deal a lot with HRs, working with staff, that kind of thing. What happens if someone comes into the workplace, whether it's postnatal depression or any kind of other depression? What happens to the dynamics, the teams? You know, what are things that you can look out for and say, there's a problem, we need to address this?
Well, a lot of it, sometimes what happens, we've noticed, is that it's also high performance that tend to mask it, and that's an internal struggle. So if you start noticing signs such as this person's really organized and they are missing deadlines, they're not focused, they're late to come to work, all of those things, those is quite warning flags saying, whoa, there's something not aligned here. That's when we need to reach out and ask, you know, you're more quieter than usual, are you okay? Things like that. But what I realize is that we're always also in our own bubble. We're not always present when someone comes back from maternity leave or when someone is struggling and isolating themselves. So I think it's really important to get back to that human connection within teams and be more present in teams. And I've noticed that a lot of teams lately are feeling overwhelmed and burnt out. And they're performing, that they don't start noticing what's happening with their colleagues around them. So being more present, being more intentional, before you start your work day, stop in, say hello, check in on everyone, do like a little bit of an emotional check-in. I think it's the responsibility of everyone in the team, not just of the manager, to do that. I think it's important to create a culture of compassion and connection. And otherwise you won't pick up signals such as irritability, anger lashing, missing deadlines, lack of focus. Those are quite the big, vast ones that show that person's having internal struggles.
I think the same as what Taryn says. It's difficult because people are in their own worlds. Life is happening.
Yeah.
You come to work, not just focused on work, but you bring everything that's happening at home is coming to work as well. You don't leave it at the front door. You can't switch it off like that. Some people get it right, and you know, kudos to them, but it's difficult. So for the person coming back into work, they are overwhelmed. The other people, the team members, might not pick up on that. So what I believe, and that's what we do at Boardroom Couch as well, is you need to start with everybody in terms of just the basics. And the basics would be in terms of emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is rated as one of the top 10 key skills for 2030, the new report that came out, the Future of Jobs report. So that is a key skill, and if we can get that right, if we can train every person in the workplace in terms of emotional intelligence, we're going to start helping address issues like mental health. Because a basic thing in terms of that is active listening.
Yes.
And we listen with the intent to respond and not with the intent to understand.
Exactly.
And if we have that person in the workplace that comes back from maternity leave, be it the husband or the wife, they come back and we don't pick up because we don't have this emotional intelligence, we don't have that empathy, it's going to be difficult to bring in those discussions of mental health. Because we are not equipping our people, we're not providing them with the tools to do that.
Knowing them up front makes a big difference.
Yes.
So I'd mentioned beforehand that when I had my first child, because I was a single parent, my church was absolutely fantastic. You know, they found a reduced cost accommodation for me. I had a lady who used to pitch up every month with nappies and formula. So a lot of my basic needs were taken care of. What they didn't realize is the utter loneliness I felt. So on a Sunday, I'd go to church, everyone would be happy, and then I'd say, what are you guys going to be doing now? My parents lived in Port Elizabeth, I stayed in Johannesburg, and they'd say, oh, we're going to go have lunch. No one ever invited me for lunch. Now that wasn't it's not a condemnation to them, but it's like if you have an emotional toolkit beforehand and say, we've got a single mom, the chances are that she's going to need to have a little bit more connection. That would make a difference. So my Sunday afternoons, we're going home with a baby and watching Seven de Laan. South Africans will know this is an old soap opera, the Afrikaans soap opera. And then on a Sunday, they would have the omnibus, the whole week's episode. And I would watch Seven de Laan omnibuses every Sunday, crying my eyes out. Every single Sunday, because the loneliness, the isolation was terrible. Now, no one over there had like a mental telepathy that they could see, but if you have conversations, and NGOs, organizations, they know that these things can happen, they can be proactive. Because the worst thing you can say to someone is, if you need anything, just let me know. Well, I don't know what I need.
Precisely.
I don't know that I'm going to feel lonely on a Sunday. I don't know I'm going to feel this way. But if I know that that happens, then I can say, let's have a little tea for the new moms and hire a babysitter that they can just sit and have a tea and a chat and not worry about the child for an hour a week. That will make a difference.
And I think this is why it's so important, this book that you're writing can just open up the doors of conversation to say, this is the things that one has to consider. This is what a single mother is going through. It's difficult, you need that support, but you need also for people to understand that and reach out and provide that support, albeit family, friends, but especially in your community and in the workplace. Just to open up that door and say to the single mom, it's okay. How can we help? Not how can we help, but these are things that we can do for you, just like you said, in terms of let us take the baby for an hour, or come have lunch with us at our house, so that you can get to know the person as well.
Yes.
And that's building up a sense of community that you want.
And what I have found that really works in the workplace is when HR or team members work on the 3 Ps, I like to call it. So it is presence, and then it's pause, and then it's personalization. Presence in a sense, before they come to work, pick up the phone. Also do visits and say, how is maternity leave doing? Just start building that relationship while they're on maternity leave. But the thing is, we tend to, you're on maternity leave, we push you aside, we give you space.
Yes.
Now, what we don't realize as a workplace is that we are 87% of our lives at work. You know, work does become us, whether we like it or not, you know, and that's why it's so important to love what you do with purpose. But coming back to the Ps is that be present more often than needed. So reach out to your team member, find out, how are you really doing? Like, can I come visit? Can I come see you? Have that one-on-one moments. But before they come back into the workspace, also ask, we know you're navigating a new area of your life. How can we assist you with this? What is going to make things work for you? And it could be like, is there a breastfeeding room? Is there to pump milk? Is there, can I have flexi hours? Things like that. We need to navigate that before we in it. And a lot of workplaces don't do that.
Yes.
They don't prepare before the person comes back. And then in a sense of pause, know that in the workspace and as team members and as managers, the person is navigating something new. They're going to do things a little differently than what you're used to. You can't expect someone just to walk in the next day and be like, hey, I'm here, let's get going again, and be at a full pace.
Yes.
You know, then that's a laughing matter. I mean, really, it's dismal. It's not going to happen because this person's going through something mentally, physically, and spiritually,
Yes.
and emotionally.
Yes.
So it's also knowing that you need to pause.
Yes.
That it's okay if this person drops the ball now and then, and show that support. And but also not what's the word when you like when you add it too much, for example.
Overwhelm them.
Overwhelm them. Like, oh,
Yeah.
you're okay because I know you need a breastfeed. And have you eaten because you need milk? And you know,
Faffing over them.
Faffing, that's the word. Faffing. Be careful also not to faff too much, especially as a mother, because we want to come in and solve immediately, right?
Yes.
Be careful for that, because some people don't like to be faffed around and some people do. So also read that. So prepare, pause, presence, and not just that, personalize.
Yes.
And that's what I'm coming to, is that I, for example, sometimes like the isolation because I'm around a lot of people all the time. And then when I isolate, people think that that's not part of my personality. Meanwhile, that is how I fill up my bucket. So you're going to personalize something for each person in the workspace when they're coming in.
Yes.
But you won't know how to personalize if you don't prepare beforehand and have those conversations before they re-enter the workspace.
I like the idea of having a safe space to do the breast pump, because what you don't always realize is you get these beautiful little pads. They're like, I call them breast sanitary towels. Pop them on your breast, but your milk isn't like regulated. It's not, you can't turn it on and off like a tap. So you could be sitting in the boardroom and then all of a sudden there are these wet patches and then the men are like, what just happened?
What is going on? Imagine that.
And so it like really does happen. So if you've got a safe space and you almost like have a pack, and you say, look, I'm not going to be faffing around you, but we've got a water station that you can hydrate. There is a safe space that you can decant, and maybe give them a little gift bag with a cooler bag and say, like, this is if you need to put your milk in over there.
That's a great idea.
Really practical things.
I love that. I love that. But a lot of workspaces now, especially Heineken is one of them, I know has started creating breastfeeding rooms for their people, where it's specifically designated for moms. And not just that, in America, which I absolutely love, I can't remember the company's name now, but they even go as far as to have a nursery school or a creche at their workspaces, so that you know that your child is okay and you can check in. Because let's be honest, you're on that maternity leave, right? And then you come back and you're kind of like, okay, now I'm another person. Now I need to go into my career. But you're constantly worrying about your baby as well. Is my baby safe? Is my baby okay? Because now you've been with this baby all this time. You've kept this baby alive, and now you're entrusting someone with that baby. No one speaks about that. That you have to give over. I remember the first time I had to give over my baby to nursery school, I cried. I was overwhelmed. I couldn't stop crying. I was like, what if something happens? Your anxiety is on a whole new level. So it's important to also know that that's what moms are navigating as well, on top of the breastfeeding and still having to organize dinners. And if you have more than one kid, sports schedules, school, homework, the list goes on and on when we have, it doesn't just stop at just breastfeeding and changing diapers. There's so much more into motherhood. But Kim, I must be honest, what I found fascinating is when you spoke about post-natal depression in men. That blew my mind when I read your Taming the Monster, because I always saw it as it only happens to women, to mothers, because I've only been in that role. And it actually gave me such a light bulb aha moment that, sure, but what was my husband going through during this whole process? Because not all men are more vocal or communicative in their feelings and their needs. So I think that's such an important thing you've touched on.
So what we don't always think about is they wake up when you wake up. Okay, you do get some people like, I'll sleep through an earthquake. But generally, a man will wake up when the baby wakes up, because he has got that instinct towards the child as well. And a funny story is that the church came through the one day and they brought us like 2 days worth of meals. My husband's only job was to dish up that meal in the evening. And so there were a lot of other things that he did for us, but I came through, I just breastfed the baby, I came through, I found him in the kitchen with the plates laid out, and he had for a moment just put his head against the kitchen cupboard, just momentarily, and he fell asleep standing with the plates with his head against the cupboard. You know, they are tired. They don't know how to, that all of a sudden there was a sexy, vibrant, fun woman, and now she's turned into this monster. She cries at the drop of a hat. You don't know, what did you do wrong? And then men were like, is this how it's always going to be? Am I never going to have a relationship with my wife again? You know, so those are things that they don't really know what they're doing. I know of a guy that was involved with a woman who had a baby. It wasn't his biological child, but he stepped into that role. A few months after that, he decided to immigrate, sold a house, sold the car, and he never really got back into the right space again. And I was speaking to him recently. He said, like, getting rid of the house was the worst thing I ever did. And I said to him, it's quite possible that you were suffering from postnatal depression as well. You know, what do I do with this role? But when you recognize it and you know, I'm going to feel overwhelmed, there are some support groups. There are a lot of men's retreats that are starting to pop up. It's just a matter of saying, I actually don't know how to be a dad.
Yes.
I've seen a lot of those retreats come up, as well as one of our speaker colleagues, Jabu Zwane, speaks a lot to men and relationships and how navigating marriage with kids. And he does a lot of those men retreats. But again, the key is the man stepping up and saying, I need the help, I need the support. Because society has also taught them that you need to just cover your emotions and move on, especially in South Africa with our different cultures that we have here. So they're not as vocal as women about these groups. And I was saying to Lynn the other day, how cool would it be if workplaces had something like, they have the well-being sessions and the once-off series, and now and then bringing light and shedding light to mental health in October month. They do it once a month, once a year, once a month. I don't think that's going to cut it. And I said to Lynn, how cool would it be if there was a continuous peer parent group?
Yes.
Like if you had a cheerleader and you were like, because right now I'm navigating grade 4. It is terrible. Like the hormones, the exams, it's like I'm writing grade 4 all over again and still being a mother, right? And I'm not knowing how to navigate that. And I've had to reach out to people and say, listen, is this happening to you as well? Because, you know, or am I okay as a mother, you know? So you kind of always assessing yourself. I don't know, I'm talking for myself, but I'm continuously assessing myself to see, you know, what, am I a good mother? Am I giving enough to my kids? And if we as in workplaces can just have those parent support groups, not just for newborn mommies, you know, and daddies, but also for parents who are trying to do this thing called life. We're trying to be our best person in our career, and we're also just trying to show up as our own identity. You know, sometimes you want to sit with people and say, you know what, my kid's been through that too. It's just a phase, don't worry, you're going to get through it. It's that community. And I have found that a lot of the times, connection can also heal, not just therapy. People seem to think therapy heals. Yes, it does. It's a process. But we underestimate human connection and what connection can do. And it goes back to what you said, Kim, about that community. Back in the day, you were in a small village or in a community and everyone stepped in. They all knew that they had a role to play with this newborn mommy. Newborn mommy that, you know what I mean. So I think it's important to ask yourself, you know, where as an individual can I come up to my company and say, I'd like to take initiative, create a parent peer group, support group, and also find out what resources does your company have, because a lot of the times companies have the resources but they don't tell their people. So also, it's our responsibility to ask, you know, what is available to me in the company, and know that my team members going through this, and say, do you know that there's something like this out there? Let's create a peer group together. Things like that. It's again coming down to what Lynn said, emotional intelligence.
Yes. So one of the things that I found was really helpful, actually two things. Now, I wasn't working in a company. I've been an entrepreneur for as long as I can remember. But when I had my child, I had a client that I used to go get briefs from, and she contacted me the one day and she said, I need to see you today. We've got an urgent proposal and I need your help. And I so badly wanted to go, but I didn't have any childcare that particular day. So I just was honest. And I think honesty is really the key. I said to her, I can't come through. I've got no one. And she says, no, you must come through. And she said, bring your baby. I will have some things like some crayons or pens or whatever. She can sit over here and she can just color in. I just need to give you this brief that you can start working on it. That made such a difference to me. And I'm like, wow, I can actually be a supplier. And she wasn't the only person. There were other people that, I said, this is what my situation is. I know I'd make a joke about it. I either bring the baby through or we have to reschedule. And I was surprised at how many people said, just bring the child. One of my suppliers called me in the one day and he said to me, I've got my designer that can work on your work today. I said, Mark, I've got the little one with, and he said, bring her over. He had parented 5 kids, 3 of his own, 2 with him, and he's like, cool, I'll heat up the bottle. He made the formula, and I could sit with the graphic designer, we could get the work out.
Oh, that's awesome. Yes.
Then tell me, what does it look like, if I had to do a comparison, what does it look like from a productivity perspective if I feel supported as an employee versus when I don't feel supported in my family life? How does that translate out in the workplace?
Yes, it's going to have an impact, especially in terms of team dynamics as well. But the person might be seen as not being, we call it presenteeism. They are there, but they're not really there. They're not engaged. They're not taking part of the conversation. So it has an impact in terms of productivity. As a leader, you might think the person is lacking initiative, or there's a change in attitude, and they might just call it out as bad behavior. If the person is not seen and heard and respected, it's going to take a big dip in productivity. And that has an impact on the rest of the organization, because the leader is then saying, it's not so important for me, business, it's the bottom line, it goes about the bottom line. And we're letting the people aspect, we're just leaving it out of the equation. And people are the core of the business. Without people, you're not going to have business. And there's this thing that we say, emotions drive people, people drive performance. So if we're not looking after the people and we're not paying attention and we're not listening, like really listening, and we're not paying attention to them, there's going to be a dip in productivity. And also in terms of the person's professional life. And that's why it's important to give support, especially with those different roles. I was just thinking, Nana, as well. You have the parent role. You say you might have going to school, you've got these kids this age. Now you have the professional role. You might have a different role in the community. It's all these hats that I have to wear. And no one is seeing that or recognizing that or understanding that. And if we as leaders can just make space for that person, give them emotional safety so that they feel free that they can talk, or give them space to be and to process those emotions that they're going through. Bottom line is, as a leader, lead by example. Sometimes you need to open up and share some of the struggles and challenges you have. And it was interesting. We were training a team. We took a team through a leadership program over a period of 11 months. And they all seemed to have it together in the beginning of the program. All, what I say, prim and proper, and these walls that they had around them. And as we started the process, we built up trust. They got to know each other. We started having those brave conversations. And that's when the real things happen. That's why the conversations on the couch are so important. But that's when people started speaking up. And the beauty was the rest of the team realized it's okay to talk about these challenges, because it was incredible. Every single person in that room had a mental health challenge, but we don't talk about it because of the stigma. If I just mention anything that I'm struggling with something, and it could be postnatal depression, it could be bipolar, it could be normal, anxiety, panic attacks, all of that. There's a stigma. A lot of people are trying to address that stigma, but it's difficult. If we can break the silence, I always say there's a silent scream. If we can identify that silent scream in the workplace, we'll be so much better to help our people so that they achieve their purpose. We support them in achieving their purpose, and also help them be more productive. And as a business, you're going to achieve more. And I think if you can go back home as a leader knowing that you've seen, heard, and respected your people, and you've understand where they are coming from, you can go home with a sense of accomplishment, not just from a business perspective, but as a perspective in terms of also living your purpose, also making that human connection and reaching out to other people.
So in terms of when you mentioned that people are driving performance, one of the things that I noticed when I was going through the postnatal depression, and every bit of work that I did, I knew was going to provide for this child. But there were days where I was so overwhelmed that I couldn't finish anything. I'd like do this, do a little bit of that. Nothing actually got finished. So I developed this thing where I called it the one thing. I would say, what is the one thing I'm going to do now? Whether that was just picking up the phone and making a telephone call, or it was sending an email, just one thing. And I restricted myself to just one thing. Then I would get up, I'd walk around the house, like sometimes 20 times. And I'm like, okay, I feel better now. I'm going to go back in and do the next one thing. Then I do that one thing only, and I do this again. I got a lot of steps in. And then someone said to me, how do you get anything done like that? I mean, so I said, do you know what? All of those one things added up. And at the end of the day, I said I achieved 10 things today, whereas when I felt overwhelmed and faffing and whatever, then I didn't get anything done. So I think that knowing that and knowing how to support people and saying maybe productivity in this season looks a bit different, but we're still going to get it done.
Yes, precisely.
Well, interesting. I'm currently going through burnout at the moment, where I feel like I start something and then I move on, and then I start something and then I move on, and I really struggle to finish things and actually have my head on my shoulders, to be honest, and it's quite overwhelming. And I had to teach myself that it's okay to have days where I'm not okay. Being someone that's really highly ambitious and a go-getter the whole time, people know me as go, 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 go. And I've had to learn to actually slow down and really stop and think, what do I really want? Is my timeline, the same as someone else's timeline? You see, because I might be in a season completely different from someone else. But again, it's that trap of comparison in your career. I know for a fact that when I found out I was pregnant with the third baba, she was a big surprise. So Zara, if you're watching this one day, Mommy loves you very much. But she was a massive, massive surprise where I cried for 2 full days, to a point where my husband rushed back home and he's like, do you have cancer? Are you okay? I'm like, no, I'm pregnant. And he just laughed. He was like, you're acting as if you're dying. And I said, but you don't understand. When we are career-driven and you're an entrepreneur, you want to get going. You want to, and sometimes we think, now that we're pregnant, we're going to set ourselves back. I've seen women who are 8 months pregnant do a marathon, incredible things. But it comes back down to productivity. And what I want to say there is that it's okay not to have it together. And you're going to have days where it's going to be great. And then there are going to be days where you feel, I didn't do that much. But know that on those days that you did not do much, you're still okay. And it's okay to feel that. And you're not useless. You're not worthless. Because that can impede your confidence levels. And your abilities, and you can have more self-doubt. And I know that is something that I'm personally navigating at the moment, is self-doubt, confidence levels, and all of that because of this burnout, you know. So I'm trying to navigate this turf as, what does it look like now? Where do I go? And that's something we don't speak often is that high performers, you know, we don't know when to stop. And when we do stop, we feel we are lazy. We criticize ourselves. And we feel we're useless and we have no worth in this world. And that's something we have to navigate together and speak more up, because I'm telling you, the report came out just last month saying that there's only 7% now that are actually engaged at work. The rest are all burnt out and overperforming the whole time. It's a go, 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 go. And we've been noticing a lot of the trend that a lot of companies are letting go a lot of people and still giving the same amount of workload to the teams. And now the managers are expecting them to perform. But what they don't realize is that, you know, you cannot do it. You cannot. At what cost?
Yes.
So that's basically if you were to buy a car and you put in a tank of petrol, you can drive around the city a little bit, but now you're saying take that car, drive it to Cape Town on the single tank of petrol.
Exactly.
It's not going to work.
It's not.
And people just lose their minds where they think, you know, this basic mathematics, it's not going to work. Dumping all of this work onto the person and expecting them to perform the same way as those multiple tanks of people's productivity.
I actually know, I read of a study on LinkedIn where they said, the one guy said, all right, if you want me to do that, then come on, you do it. I'll give you a week, not even a day. And they actually challenged their manager and said, you know what, if you want to push me to do it and you think I'm capable, great, let's see if it is humanly possible. I dare you to do it. And he actually threatened and he said, come on, I dare you. You're pushing me the whole time. And the manager did, and he said it was such a life-changing moment because of the fact that the top downward is always pushing for the bottom line. I don't realize, again, your people are your greatest asset. Your people get you your profits. So if you don't look after the heart, you know, the operation's not going to be successful. And they think that you can easily just get the next person. Fine, you don't want to work for me? Great, out, boot you out. But what they don't realize is that it costs them more. Onboarding, getting a new person in, all of that whole process. Why not let's just fix the culture? Let's put our people first, and then you'll start seeing everything falls into place. And again, the research proves it time and time again.
Now, on that point, you work with a lot of HR managers, and I heard when you were doing your relaunch that you are planning to have an HR retreat.
Yes, I'm excited.
Tell us about the HR retreat.
So we're looking at we know that a lot of the HR colleagues that I work with is really struggling a lot with burnout. Surprise, surprise. And also what happens is when you're in the HR space, we tend to think just because we're in the human space that we can, you know, fill our own buckets. But believe it or not, HRs aren't given the tools and resources to fill their own buckets. I mean, they're dealing with a lot of people problems every single day. They go home with those people problems. It's a lot to take in. So it is an opportunity for HRs to come together in a safe space and to really say, this is what I'm struggling with, and to get the proper tools and resources they can fill their buckets and go back into the workspace and make the difference that they do. And I feel like HRs are so undervalued in an organization, but they are the glue of any company. They keep the people happy, they help the people, they support the people, they encourage the people. And I encourage all HR professionals to really go out there and fill your own bucket. We're so used to giving it to other people the whole time and putting people first. We don't realize that we need it in order to give it.
Exactly, filling your own tank.
Exactly. Yep. But it's easier said than done. Let me just say that. Easier said than done. Yeah.
Ladies, I think I could chat about this topic for the whole day. You can create a whole seminar about it. But we are going to have to wrap it up. I think that we're going to I think this conversation has opened up a lot of future conversations, and I do believe that people are going to be helped. So for the audience, the reason that I have written this book is because I've been in that space of postnatal depression. And it was a dark, horrible space. And in that time, I did things, I thought things, and I became the person that I thought was a monster. I felt deeply ashamed of who I was and how I was going to navigate the next season. But it was only when I had the courage to reach out and ask for help that things got better. And that's why I've written Taming the Monster, so that other people can realize you're not alone. This is just a journey, part of the journey, and there is hope in the end. Thank you so much for coming with us.
And Kim, thank you for writing that book and
Yes.
shedding light on this. I think it's really important, and I can't wait to see what happens from here.
Excellent.
Thank
See you
you.
at the next session.
Yes.